So welcome and thank you everyone for joining us for this by name list and coordinated access community of practice call to learn more about Toronto's Rapid Rehousing Initiative, which I know I am very excited to hear more about. I want to begin with a land acknowledgement, and I invite all of you to take this opportunity to put your own land acknowledgement in the chat. From coast to coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral territory of all the Inuit, Métis, and First Nations people that call this land home. I am located in Kitchener, Ontario, which is situated on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Neutral peoples, whose presence on these lands continues to this day. And I see some other land acknowledgements coming in the chat. That's great. Welcome, everyone. My name is Marie Morrison. I'm the Director of Built for Zero Canada, and I'm your host today, along with Ashley Vandermark, who's just going to give a wave. There she is. And then we have three amazing presenters. We have Renee Lavallee, who is a Street Outreach Program Officer with the City of Toronto. She leads the team that facilitates the Rapid Rehousing Initiative within Coordinated Access. She's been with the City of Toronto since 2018, working within shelter support and housing administration. Since 2002, Renee has worked in various shelter settings throughout the GTA, including those within the violence against women sector, youth, and single sector. And we welcome Lisa, who's been working with the City of Toronto since 2010. She worked with Streets to Homes as a street outreach worker up until November 2021 when she joined the Rapid Rehousing team. Lisa is working as both a housing counselor and caseworker on the Rapid Rehousing team, really giving her a unique perspective on all sides of the frontline operations. During her career, Lisa has worked in several community-based settings, focusing her work in areas such as corrections, mental health, housing, and homelessness. And we have Ashley Fontaine, who's the Manager of Community Resolution at the Toronto Community Housing Corporation. She leads a specialized team that supports vulnerable communities with the goal of housing stability. Since 2007, Ashley has worked in various trauma-based settings within the GTA with a focus on eviction prevention and trauma-informed practices. So we have a very amazing group of presenters, like representing a wide range of experience with this program. So welcome and thank you for being here. This webinar is being brought to you today from the Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness, which leads a national movement of individuals, organizations, and communities working to end homelessness in Canada, and includes the 5 key initiatives that you see listed here. This by name list and coordinated access support for communities is funded in part by the Government of Canada through the CCI funding stream of Reaching Home. Thank you to Reaching Home. This webinar is part of a series of monthly webinars and community practice calls through the Canadian Alliance that have been taking place since the fall of 2019 and up until March of 2022. The calendar for January to March has been released, and you can find all the community practice calls that we're having there, both those coming up and then previous ones in the archive on the Training and Technical Assistance website. And a little bit of housekeeping, just to know that as always, we're recording this presentation. It'll be sent out within a few days to all those who have registered. It will also be posted on that Training and Technical website under the archive webinars. Closed captioning is enabled. You should be able to choose whether you can view it or not. And Ashley, give me the nod, like, are you seeing it? You're not. Okay, I'm going to play around after we get going to see if I can get that showing up for folks. It's showing up on my end and should be showing up for others. Everyone today is muted, but please do use the chat and the question function to make comments and ask questions. You can also use the little emoticons that you can use to kind of share. So please participate and think about your questions as we go along here. And with no further ado, I am going to turn it over to Renee.
Awesome. Thank you, Marie. I appreciate it. Good afternoon, everyone, and we're really excited to be here. We're just going to jump right into our first slide and how things got started with Rapid Rehousing. So we have a lot of time at the end for questions if folks have them. So Rapid Rehousing was a response to COVID-19. So when the pandemic hit the City of Toronto, we quickly established the Rapid Rehousing Initiative to move people experiencing homelessness into rent geared to income housing. So the initiative was part of a comprehensive response to move people out of congregate shelter settings and encampment settings and into appropriate physical distancing accommodations. Prior to the implementation of rapid rehousing, the intake of vulnerable tenants from this city shelter systems, including those with priority, had not had the same degree of wraparound services and intake and matching with service providers and tenants that the Rapid Rehousing Initiative provides. In addition to responding to the emergency housing needs during the COVID-19 pandemic, the program was also designed to address the gaps in supports that newly housed tenants from the shelter system were previously receiving. While the Rapid Rehousing Initiative was implemented quickly, it builds on years of research and policy development and the city's current work building a coordinated access system. We're able to match clients to units with supports, and we're able to use a common assessment tool to support getting people into housing and providing appropriate supports to maintain it. The initiative highlights how strong a collaboration approach is, which is client-centered, and it utilizes each agency's strengths. And so for us, having the ability to kind of move folks into housing with that wraparound already in place, that's where we've seen, I think, the most of our successes. A little bit later in the presentation, Ashley is going to speak to what those housing outcomes have looked like, and how important those wraparound services have been for us. So how did we do it? How did we do it? So we identified people experiencing chronic homelessness currently or on the centralized wait list for rent geared to income housing. The program combines a housing first and rapid rehousing approach. It focuses on people experiencing chronic homelessness who have low to moderate support needs, offering immediate access to housing with no readiness conditions, along with time-limited mobile follow-up supports. So every client that was identified to go into housing was assigned a follow-up worker that would follow them throughout their journey for up to 1 year. Shelter Support and Housing Administration and Toronto Community Housing worked quickly to identify available units and provide access to those people already on the rent geared to income wait list who were staying in shelters, sleeping outdoors, and those within the VAW sector. Can we get the next slide, sorry? Thank you. So what processes do we follow and how do we find the processes we need? Obviously, there's a lot of work to be done to move folks quickly through, but we've been able to build relationships with all of our partnering agencies as well as Toronto Community Housing to be able to kind of navigate these processes individually. So essentially, the way that the process works is units are allocated to the Rapid Rehousing Initiative by Toronto Community Housing. We receive the units from Ashley, and then we allocate those units to our vetted programs and or the portfolios based on the percentage of people experiencing chronic homelessness that are staying at those sites. So we use a prioritization approach, which means that we run a by name list, and the by name list is inclusive of folks who have the longest stay in the shelter and are currently on the centralized wait list. And then we filter based on their total overnight stays, if they have an active housing application, and ensuring that they are in one of the either congregate shelter settings or with our street outreach programs. The by name list is provided to all sites, inclusive of clients staying within their programs that meet all of the eligibility criteria. So chronically homeless, length of stay within the shelter or sleeping outdoors, active housing applications with access to housing, rent cafe, and then so we essentially send the by name list to the sites. I'm following my notes and it's making me more confused. So I'm just going to speak to the process as I know it because I think that's easier. So we send the by name list to the sites. The sites then take the by name list, which is inclusive of folks that are staying within their program, and they match them to the units that we've provided. And that is done based on, a couple of different parameters. One, is the unit a good fit for that client? Does the client want to live in that area? Are they interested in that building? do they have all of their, documentation ready to go to be able to move through the housing process? And do they have an active application for housing in with access to housing? If all of those things are a good match and the client agrees to that unit, then we match them to the unit and we start moving forward to the process where we start to collect documentation. So each site identifies a site lead. And essentially what happens is that when we send the initial email out that allocates the units to the site lead matches the clients to those units, and then that person is responsible for supporting all of the documentation back and forth with our Rapid Rehousing team. So each site is asked to have one site lead. The reason that we have put a lot of focus on having one site lead at each site is that we found that communicating with multiple people at each site really complicated our processes. So having a certain person identified as the Rapid Rehousing lead at each site was really able to mainstream those processes and make sure that we were moving through the process of allocation and then straight through to lease signing very quickly. Once the units have been allocated to the site, the staff on site work with the clients to match them and then to start collecting the documentation that's required. And one of the key pieces of documentation that we focus on currently is a housing support screening tool. We use the HSST to determine folks' ability to fit within our low to moderate support level requirement. As I mentioned before, follow-up supports are attached to every client that is housed through Rapid Rehousing, and we want to ensure that we're housing folks that have the ability to maintain that housing permanently with a support level that is appropriate for our program. So we work with the site to complete the housing support screening tool, and we use that as a means to move forward with our referrals to our follow-up support programs. Once all of the documentation for the client is collected and approved by Toronto Community Housing, we move forward with the viewing of a furnished unit. If the client accepts the unit following the viewing, then we trigger a lease generation date, which can happen within 24 to 48 hours of that viewing. The client returns to the unit and signs their lease, and they receive their keys that day. We can move through this process in 7 to 10 business days if a client has all of their documentation ready. So a large part of the work that we're doing on a regular basis is working with our referring partners and sites to really highlight the importance of ensuring that documentation is being worked on proactively. Because if a client has all of that stuff ready to go, when we come forward with a unit, then we're able to expedite these processes very quickly. So I just wanted to quickly touch on some of the eligibility requirements for the Rapid Rehousing program. So a client has to have an active rent application. They are required to have low to moderate support needs. They must agree to follow-up supports, as that's a part of our program. They have to agree to have their rent paid directly, and they have to agree, sign an agreement to participate in work with coordinated access. As well, we require a detailed housing support screening tool, which has been completed by hopefully the client's primary worker. The follow-up supports referral takes place the day the client signs the lease. We have a follow-up supports team that receives that referral, and they're able to assign follow-up right away. Usually within a week or so of tenancy, follow-up is connecting with that client and able to support them with the processes of moving forward in their new home. And like I mentioned before, our timelines sit in and around 7 to 10 business days if everything works out the way that we plan it to. Doesn't always work out that way, but if everybody has their ducks in a row, we're usually able to move people through the process relatively quickly. So in terms of pulling it all together, Partnerships have driven our program success for sure. Like, we would not have been able to mobilize as quickly as we have if it wasn't for our partners and our colleagues at Toronto Community Housing, with Toronto Employment and Social Services, as well as the Furniture Bank. Toronto Community Housing provide move-in ready units and the dedicated staff to prepare leases and proactively protect tenancies and as challenges arise. We were able to streamline access to the Housing Stabilization Fund by the Toronto Employment and Social Services, providing dedicated staff and processes for clients receiving social assistance to access funds to support their transition into housing. The Furniture Bank has worked with Toronto's Office of Partnerships to store and distribute goods donated by corporate sponsors. Each home is provided with a full set of furniture, cookware, dishes, utensils, personal hygiene products, and cleaning products. And all of those items are generally in the unit before the clients are viewing the unit, which Lisa will speak to in a little while, but it's been really impactful for us. And I think the process of having the units furnished has really allowed the clients to see their unit as their home as opposed to just housing, which has been super great for them. And our follow-up support workers come to us through multiple community agencies and have helped new tenants connect to supports in their new neighborhoods and problem solve any challenges as they arise. So clear lines of communication and coordination among all partners has been the key to housing people quickly and building in effective wraparound services. And certainly we would not have seen the success that we have over the course of the last couple of years had we not had those partnerships in place. So we're super grateful for our partners in supporting us in the work that we're doing all the time. And then I am going to pass it over to Ashley.
Thanks, Renee. I'm going to speak to a couple different areas regarding housing stability and also our outcomes to date. So this program has required TCH to streamline our own internal procedures to support the program delivery. We have been able to provide dedicated staff to ensure that applicants being put forth for housing were meeting our legislative requirements, and then ensuring that we had dedicated staff to ensure lease signings were conducted quickly and move-ins could occur on a rapid basis for the foundation of the program. Through our dedicated staff, we have a dedicated tenant service coordinator who streamlines the lease generations alongside the shelter's admin staff. And also we have dedicated community service coordinators who support files after they've been housed to support eviction prevention. So with that, our high needs community services coordinators play a key role in supporting the case management model of the Rapid Rehousing Initiative. Our team acts as a conduit for communication between follow-up workers and TCH building staff, and between TCH and coordinated access. This has been a huge feat as a landlord, is because we have a direct communication linkage to coordinated access through our follow-up partner agencies. Given this, we know from our own ongoing experiences that sometimes TCH frontline building staff are the first individuals to observe someone in crisis or someone that needs an extra helping hand. So they reach out to our team, who in turn can reach out to the follow-up workers to give them a flag to request a home visit, and just to keep everyone on the same page with open communication. To summarize that, our community services coordinators, the goal is to ensure that the right information goes to the right partners at the right time to ensure that these vulnerable tenancies, if in fact they are at the area of eviction, do not fall through the cracks. That is our main mission as a landlord. And this is what, as a landlord, has really opened my eyes to the blueprint of how we house individuals with that wraparound supports. The key to this initiative from my lens has been TCH's ability to discuss and quickly address issues experienced on the front lines directly with follow-up agencies. This initiative has highlighted the ongoing importance of working in a collaborative nature to support proactive eviction prevention and to support long-term healthy tenancies. By working together, we will see more tenancies being stabilized, fewer tenants in the shelter system, and fewer legal resources required to evict the eviction process. Next slide, please. So this excites me when we start to look at the outcomes, because I think this really speaks volumes. So I'm just going to throw a couple numbers out here just so everyone has a better understanding. Since March 2020, 783 vacant units have been identified. and were filled with 1,029 29 individuals that have included both individuals and families and seniors who have been housed through this initiative. So during phase one, which took place in 2020, 333 units were allocated, and that housed 459 individuals. Under phase two, which commenced in 2021, 450 units were allocated, which housed 570 individuals. And we've just begun commencing phase three with another allotment of 450 units. Now, when we look at this, this chart here, we can see the number of individuals housed and maintained housing. So as a landlord, when we talk about legal cards being served, in 2020,
we have
lost you, Ashley. We knew Ashley was maybe going to have some issues with technology, so let's see if she can get herself back. Otherwise, I can pick up this piece. We can't hear you.
Anything?
Yes, got you. Yeah, you're back.
Okay. Fantastic. Sorry about that all. So from phase one, out of 459 individuals that have been housed, we have 7 files in legal. Now, make a note, with those 7 files in legal, we will do everything in our power to keep those individuals housed continually. Even though as a landlord, we had accountability that we had to serve, we will still engage with the follow-up workers to support a healthy tenancy to try and avoid that eviction to take place. And under phase two currently, 570 housed, we have 1 file in legal. Now, those files and legals could represent illegal acts, impairing of safety, interfering with reasonable enjoyment. But the main thing I want to highlight with these numbers, they are outstanding as a landlord. They're absolutely outstanding. And still with that dedicated mission, even when we have to serve, that we're still implementing those dedicated supports and that ongoing communication where we've put in additional mechanisms in place to support that eviction prevention. Compared to out of these 8 individuals who would normally have just got legal serve notice with the door drop, we directly as a landlord are reaching out to the follow-up worker, communicating what this means, how to avoid it, and how to support the reduction of the eviction. So again, as a landlord, we are going to continue with the mission to keep everyone housed. Thank you. I'm going to pass this to my counterpart, Lisa.
Hello, can everyone hear me? Yeah?
We can hear you, Lisa.
Oh, can you? Okay, great. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about the Housing Stabilization Fund overview. The Housing Stabilization Fund has been in effect since 2013 to support clients receiving income supports from Ontario Works or Ontario Disability Support Program to stabilize their housing situation. HSF provides financial support to assist with costs related to last month's rent, rental arrears, moving, establishing a residence to purchase household items, and/or other items people may need. We have an HSF unit that centralizes all requests, and clients must apply to HSF through their individual caseworker, who would then make the referral to the HSF unit on their behalf. In terms of rapid rehousing and the speed in which we wanted to move people out of the shelters and into housing, we realized that going to each person's individual worker to make the referral would be far too time-consuming for what this program was trying to achieve. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, HSF and rapid rehousing. The circumstances of individuals and families supported via Rapid Rehousing Initiative were aligned to the intent of HSF policy. By creating a direct link between HSF unit and the coordinated access team, we were able to streamline requests directly to the HSF unit while troubleshooting concerns as quickly as they arose. A designated HSF staff person to process requests allowed for consistency in issuing benefits of individuals and families supported via the Rapid Rehousing Initiative. One of the great outcomes from this initiative was that we were able to build upon existing relationships with Toronto Community Housing Corporation and Shelter Support and Housing Administration Division, creating opportunities for further collaboration. Furniture Bank and Rapid Rehousing. Okay, next slide, please. So housing versus home. Units are furnished prior to viewing wherever possible, so clients can view the unit furnished. It will give the client an idea of comfort and what their home could look like. It will also give them a peace of mind that everything is ready for them to move in without added stressors. Okay, and then the rapid rehousing kits, how we furnish the units, you'll see this chart here. Centralizing corporate in-kind donations from business and through collaboration with the City of Toronto's Office of Partnerships. Creating standardized packages based on family size. Complete the startup packages. Centralized logistics, kit assembly, and transport across the city. Working with SSHA staff to ensure delivery was quick and efficient for each unit. Okay, Renee.
Thanks, Lisa. Thanks, Ashley. So what have we learned? We've learned that building relationships is key to positive outcomes. Successful transitions require a lot of support. Service users always have self-determination. And collaboration is the key to providing long-term stabilization for tenants. You can see this program came out of the pandemic response and a need to move people quickly, but we've been able to build an ongoing program that really pulls services together and changes the way we work together. It's a great example of how policy and operations can come together to really help support people to transition to housing and ensure ongoing housing stability. As we all have our own internal processes and areas of expertise, clear lines of communication and coordination among all partners have been key to housing people quickly and building in effective wraparound supports. So internally on our coordinated access team, the Rapid Rehousing supervisors and work very closely with the folks that oversee the follow-up supports pieces and the furniture bank pieces. We also work very closely with Ashley and her team to make sure that we're all on the same page. And then the rapid rehousing caseworkers and housing counselors that do, that tangible day-to-day work of collecting documentation, attending viewings, attending lease signings, supporting our referring partners and getting their documentation together. We're actively communicating together all of the time and not just, working in independent silos. And we found that we've been far more successful by bringing our teams together when we're doing this work. We've worked really closely with our partners and the people with lived experience to identify new ways to provide services and make sure people are being matched to the services that they actually need. We've been able to build on this collaboration, and we look forward to continuing to work together to support the people that we've been servicing up until this point in new and innovative ways. So it's been a really exciting opportunity. And as you can see by the numbers that Ashley shared earlier in our presentation, we've had a lot of success moving people very quickly from our shelter settings into housing. And I think that we're, looking forward to the remainder of phase 3, increasing those numbers even more and doing a lot of good work with our partnering agencies to get folks out of shelters and into housing. So it's been great.
Amazing. Thank you, Renee, Ashley, and Lisa. There are lots of questions that people have, and we are moving into the question time. And while we're doing these questions, I'm actually going to just take us back to the slide with your flow, because I think people have a lot of questions that kind of follow along that flow, and that might be helpful.
Okay.
So yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Are there specific questions? Should we go through the questions then?
Yeah, I've got some of them in the chat and some of them in questions, so I'll kind of just throw them your way, and Ashley Vandermark can help me with that as well. But the first question is, like, how is this process different than how it worked previously? And are the timelines different that you're seeing?
Yeah, so previously folks were offered units through Toronto Community Housing based off of the centralized wait list. So, I mean, maybe Ashley might be the better person to speak to what some of those timelines looked like before. But for us within shelter, we didn't have direct access to Toronto Community Housing units. It was, clients were all on a centralized wait list that was, encompassing of everybody throughout the city. And when your name came up on the list, you received an offer. Ashley, maybe you can speak better to what some of those timelines look like.
Well, I think that's one of the areas that we're going to want to study as a landlord moving forward, to actually see the direct impact with timelines. Because what we do know is an individual can be offered a unit, but that unit may not be ready for 6 weeks. That may not be turning key for a month. So again, they could have all the income documents ready to generate, but again, maybe the income documents isn't issued, the unit's not ready. So this was one of the main themes associated to this program as a landlord, to be able to support the city's.
We lost you. We can't hear you.
Poor Ashley.
I know.
It just defaults back. Yeah.
How about now?
Yep, we got you.
Yeah.
And I think that's been my observation over the last 2 years, is when our units are not ready, how much it delays the actual move-in process. And I think that's, as a landlord, what we can really learn from is when we have individuals that are ready to move in, all income documents are ready, but they're just still in the shelter because we're waiting for a readiness of a unit. So how are we internally supporting that that real estate point of it, to make sure that these units are ready to be able to support a quicker turnaround? And I think, again, as a landlord, that's what we need to study, and to use this program as a baseline to see, we know what we can do as shown in this program, what is on average is occurring. And that's what I'm quite interested in now that we're deeper dive into this program, that we can actually review and study it as well.
That's amazing.
And I think so, yeah, I think too, to note, like, there wasn't special allocations coming from Toronto Community Housing going directly to shelters previous to Rapid Rehousing. And so now, we know that for phase 3 of our program, which began in 2022, we have 450 allocations directly to our program that we'll be able to filter out amongst our partnering agencies through the course of 2022. And so, the short answer is how is it different than how it was done before? It wasn't done before. And so it's very new in terms of processes and how we're offering housing to folks staying within shelter.
Yeah.
And
so
just to add on to that, sorry, Marie, is I genuinely feel that this is an ongoing blueprint on how we can house individuals in future state as well. I think it's a really strong foundation as a landlord on how, as a social landlord, of what we're doing, of what hasn't worked, or what we can improve, given that we have baselines now.
Amazing. And yeah, just as people are following along the process, we're still talking about unit allocation. And so we've had some questions about, is that all the allocations now of community housing, or is that like a part of them? And I'm assuming, of course, you're still following your special priority status first before you do these units. Like, if you can just say a bit more about the number that are allocated. Is it all the units? Is it some of the units?
Well, from my standpoint, when we do unit allocation, of course, what I look at is I look at high vacancy rates in our buildings to be able to support that. So because, again, when we have, I want to have an ongoing unit turnover to the city, I try and allocate, roughly 40 to 50 units a month. So again, I pull from a high vacancy area, but now we're at the area that we don't want to cluster buildings or saturate buildings without on-site support. So now it's about being more strategic of what units we're providing to support long-term tenancies, compared to a Band-Aid solution of just providing bricks and mortar. What are we actually doing that's going to support the longevity of this tenancy?
We lost you. I would say too, the short answer to that as well is that Rapid Rehousing receives our allocations, and there's still allocations being sent out based on the centralized wait list in terms of what Toronto Community Housing's processes were before. Rapid Rehousing just has been allocated a chunk of what those units will be, the available units for the year, but that's not inclusive of all of the housing offers that are going out from Toronto Community Housing.
We still can't hear you, Ashley.
How about now?
Yep.
Yeah, we got you.
Yep. Sorry, and I just wanted to highlight also what Renee just said, and we also have countless referral agreements with agencies as well. So again, the unit sort of allocation goes to them under the referral agreement and such things like that as well.
So Dan is asking what would as a percentage that be? Like of all the units that come vacant in a year, what percentage roughly are being sort of allocated to rapid rehousing?
Oh, that's interesting, Dan. I will get back to you with that.
Okay. And then people are asking, are they new builds or this is just part of your regular portfolio and as vacancies become available?
Yes, correct. Across what the main thing that we wanted as a landlord to be able to support the city is to provide diversity in locations and to support placement with violence against women as well. So again, we try and support preferred locations to the best of my abilities, but if I don't have vacant units, I can't provide them. But again, I try to also utilize, leverage our on-site supports in our buildings that are already encompassed as well. So when they are matching these units, that they can also pull into the additional resources that are on site as well. So individuals have a better understanding of the building as a whole and the assets around the building as well.
Amazing. Okay, we're starting to move along the process chain here, and we have some questions about the housing support screening tool. So what does that include? And is it something you're able and willing to share?
So I saw some of the questions coming in around the housing support screening tool as I was presenting. And what I would say is that we're actually moving away from utilizing the housing support screening tool. It is the resource that we utilize currently, but we're moving to more of a comprehensive needs assessment, which the coordinated access team has been working on for quite some time. And I think we're relatively close to rolling that out. I think within at least the next month or so. I think Steph Melcher is on this call. She might have an actual date for you. I'll follow up in terms of whether or not we're able to share that document in terms of the HSST, but I just would say for you, if we are able to share it, it's a document that we are moving away from. It's a process that we're moving away from and we're changing because we just feel like it's not as comprehensive as maybe it needs to be in terms of some of the requirements or questions that follow-up support workers need in terms of supporting the client. So we're definitely moving away from the HSST, but we are still using it currently. So I'll get back to you, Marie, and let you know if that's something that we're able to share.
Okay, that's great. And then this program and the way you've allocated the units and the support you're providing is for low to moderate clients. So what approach are you then using for your higher acuity clients? Is that another program?
Yeah, so I mean, it's another program. So within coordinated access, we also have a paths team that is working on filling units. And I believe some of those units are for folks that fall within, a higher support level requirement. For rapid rehousing, we're only able at this time, we only have the capacity to support folks that identify in the kind of low to moderate support level. But coordinated access does have some alternative housing options for folks that require higher levels of supports. I don't want to speak to that because I do not want to give more information, the wrong information, because it's not my program. But I know that there's some options there for sure.
So there's another track for higher acuity.
Yeah, there's another track. Yeah.
Great. And then some questions about the furniture bank, like the cost per unit. I'm assuming, does the furniture bank do delivery and setup? Like, tell us a bit more about that.
So I think if Stephanie is on this call, she may be able to speak more to the cost per unit. If not, I can get that information back to you because I don't know it off the top of my head. Oh, I see her. But the furniture bank essentially delivers and sets up all of the furniture. We try to do it for every unit prior to viewing because, like Lisa mentioned, it's nice for folks to be able to view a unit that's fully furnished and kind of give them that, peace of mind around I'm moving into a home as opposed to just housing. And, it can be overwhelming to go into a unit and not have any belongings. So this has been helpful in helping folks, transition. The only time that we don't fully furnish the unit prior to a client viewing is for some of our family units because we need to know what the 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 breakdown of the family is. Like, how many beds do they need? Like, what does that look like? How do they want things set up? So for those units, the process is takes a little bit longer, but still fully furnished prior to their lease signing date. Steph, did you want to speak to the cost per unit for the furniture bank?
Hi everyone. I also don't have it off the top of my head. I was just doing some quick searching, but I will need some time to look it up. Yeah, I don't have it off the top of my head either. Sorry.
No worries, thanks. So just so everybody knows, Stephanie Melcher is the manager of coordinated access, so she oversees all of us. And so she's joined us today and hopefully can help me answer some questions if there's something that I can't speak to.
Thanks, Renee.
Hey, Renee, can I add on to that regarding the furniture bank? Just again, from a TCH standpoint, it's had such a huge impact on our team when, because usually when we have individuals who may be vulnerable or trying to access different resources to be able to now support that healthy tenancy, we're finding from our team that they can just focus on now learning to pay the rent, focusing on stabilizing in their community. They're not worried about the base necessities of life. Now they've secured, but now they can take ownership of their unit. And I'm finding that, again, I'm just basing this on my observations, but even when we look at the files housed, we have an extremely low number of individuals with high unit, high clutter levels, unsanitary levels. And again, and I'm basing on my observation, this is because they're taking pride. They have all of this furniture. They have a home. They just don't have a vacant unit. So again, I think it's been extremely impactful to support that stabilization by having a furnished unit right off the get-got there.
Stephanie's put in the chat that it costs about $1,150 to furnish a unit.
There you go. Thanks, Steph.
And then Dan is saying he's the ED of the furniture bank, which includes all furnishings, delivery, and setup, which is amazing. So Dan, I'm assuming you're getting a lot of this through donations and other ways to kind of keep those costs where they're at. I think he's typing. While he's doing that, we have a question here. What does a caseload size look like for staff supporting housed tenants?
For the follow-up support workers?
Yep.
I don't know. I want to say it's anywhere in between 15 and 20. I feel like that number has been said to me in a meeting before, but again, that's something that I'll confirm for sure. And I will communicate that back to Marie so she can filter that information out to folks.
Perfect. And this particular question asker said, I find typically it can range from 15 to 45 based on level of complexity. So yeah, that's what you're saying as well. We have some questions related to prioritization, and I think folks may have seen that Toronto's actually doing 3 presentations on different parts of their system and the work they're doing, and one of those will be specifically on the prioritization process. So, I mean, I think, Renee, if you wanted to speak to anything specific to the Rapid Rehousing program, but more broadly on prioritization, I think we'll leave that to the prioritization presentation.
Yeah, so coordinated access is doing a lot of work around prioritization, specifically when it comes to rapid rehousing though. We so how we allocate our units to sites is we take the previous year's data and we look at the sites that had the most chronically homeless folks within their program, and a percentage of units are allocated to the site based on that information. So for sites that had, the most chronically homeless individuals over the course of the last calendar year, they likely would be getting a higher level of allocations for phase 3 of rapid rehousing. What I will say is that we're moving away from the process of looking at site level allocations and starting to work at towards allocations from the by name list perspective. So the by name list is reflective of all folks who are within this shelter system, who are also on the centralized wait list for housing, and they were able to filter that to show the folks that are the most chronically homeless throughout the city of Toronto. And so we're moving in a way where we're going to be prioritizing based on that, because that's the most equitable way to do it, right? You've been most chronically homeless. The other piece I would say is that we have certain priority groups that we have focused a percentage of our allocations for each phase on. So we prioritize units for our Indigenous partners. We prioritize units for youth. And we prioritize units for the violence against women sector. And so currently those are the three groups that we're ensuring that we're prioritizing units for, and making sure that they have a certain percentage of our allocations throughout each phase of rapid rehousing.
So one of the questions is the funding for this initiative stable? So is this kind of based on one-time funding, or do you now see this as an ongoing program?
I mean, off the top of my head, I would like to tell you that it'll be an ongoing program. We've had so much success that I would like to see it go that way. But I think that's probably also a Steph question. So maybe she could speak to that piece.
Yeah, thanks, Renee. So, I mean, right now it's kind of year by year, and I think it really, because the program was developed as part of our pandemic response, I think hopefully we're going to get towards the end of that pandemic specific response, at some point soon, as we can all hope. And then I think we'll have a decision made around like what does it look like to continue this, and is it valuable to continue, post COVID? Yeah.
And Stephanie, you might know this too, like someone said, has this had an overall impact? Like, have you actually seen in your total active homeless chronic, like, has it pushed the numbers down, or is it kind of just helping hold things steady, or are you seeing it kind of impact your ultimate outcomes?
I mean, you can have a look. I'll put the link in the chat to our shelter system flow data, and you can see what our chronic homeless data looks like. I would say that it has helped to reduce the rate at which we would otherwise have seen an increase in chronic homelessness. Unfortunately, here in Toronto, we continue to see chronic homelessness increase month by month, despite, new dedicated supportive housing being built, as well as programs like this being created to target specifically this population group. So, certainly it has made a difference. Without these 450 units, we'd be in a different place. But I think the one thing that I will say about that, which has been a really interesting learning, and I think can be valuable learning for other communities as well, is that we've kind of run into a slight kind of communications wrinkle, I guess, because what we've found is that because the rent geared to income units are so coveted, people really, it really is, the gold standard of housing that people want to secure. We've found that both kind of our homelessness sector staff and people experiencing homelessness are kind of holding off on looking for private rental units and moving into the private rental sector, because they're kind of hopeful that they're going to receive one of these units, which has been like a really interesting and challenging unintended consequence of this really successful program, and something that we're really trying to figure out how to tackle that, because the reality is for Toronto, like I look at our active homeless population from the past month, and 450 units is actually relatively not that many units. So sorry, I'm just bringing up the data now. So from the end of January, we had 4,365 people experiencing chronic homelessness in Toronto. So 450 units is just over 10%. So the reality is that it's actually not, it's unlikely that you're going to get one of these units. So it's been a really interesting kind of consequence that we're just trying to figure out now how we actually deal with that.
It is exciting though, because it is more than you had before. It's such an amazing collaborative, and it speaks to like what can happen when you start to really target and focus some of those resources. So it's really great. Ashley, at the end, I'm going to let you do some like wrap up thoughts as well. Ashley Vandermark, we have a very sort of a more technical question here. Have there ever been times where a 2-bedroom has become open, and would you ever place 2 singles in that 2-bedroom, or do you just avoid that altogether?
So we do family units. We have a certain, I should have said that we have, on top of our VAW Indigenous and youth prioritization, we also do have some units that are priority for families. So we do have some family units, 2 bedrooms, sometimes 3 bedrooms, but few and far between. We have not housed 2 singles in a 2-bedroom unit to date that I am aware of. And it's not really even something that's come on the table for us. Our 2-bedroom units are primarily reserved for families. And then we have single and bachelor units for the remainder of our single sector.
Okay.
Yes, we would want to avoid that at all costs to be able to support that long-term tenancy, to avoid any loss of subsidy issues moving in the forward and such things like that. So it's better we wouldn't move forward with that. It could potentially cause some serious consequences moving forward that would be of no fault of their own. So that wouldn't be the best deal for us there.
Some people are asking how the decision got made around allocating the units from RGI to this program. Did it go through council? Like, how did you end up allocating these resources to your by name list?
And I can jump in. Hi, Adrian.
Thank you.
Nice to hear from you. So it's a great question. So it was a service system manager decision with approval through our kind of COVID emergency response. And really the decision is driven by the fact that a lot of these units are considered kind of hard to rent units. We knew through kind of previous audits that TCHC had a high vacancy rate in specific units. And so the program, while both designed to serve kind of our COVID response, also had this secondary benefit of addressing some of the challenges we knew that TCHC was having in filling some of those hard to fill or hard to rent units. So we're able to kind of like address that need as well as the COVID response need in terms of moving people out of congregate settings and into their own homes.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for that. I'm just checking the questions to see. There was one. Okay, I'm just looking through the questions there. I'm actually going to launch like our wrap-up poll to make sure people can start to answer those questions. But at the same time, Ashley, if you have questions or further thoughts that you kind of want to offer the group while I'm doing that, and we'll wait and see if any other questions come in.
Sure, thanks, Marie. First of all, I just wanted to say thanks so much to Renee and Ashley and Lisa and Steph as well on the call for sharing such incredible information, your successes, your challenges, and your learnings with the Rapid Rehousing Initiative in Toronto. And I just wanted to highlight and just so appreciate how you've mobilized in such a complex system in a relatively short space of time, and I've seen such great success. And I think it really goes to show no matter what size community you are, you can be flexible, you can mobilize, and you can make those quick decisions and make changes to impact those that are receiving service. And so just wanted to highlight that. I'm sure that's inspiring to all size communities that are sitting on the call today and for those that will listen afterwards. So thank you for sharing that story. A few of you have touched on learnings, what you've learned through this process, unintended consequences, but I really just wanted to kind of highlight that and bring it home for those that are on the call this afternoon. I'm wondering if you could each share like your top, if you could leave folks on the call with one thought, one learning as they go back to their own communities now and start to think about how they can apply some of these learnings and some of the takeaways. What would be your top takeaway for communities to leave this call with?
Sorry, I just wanted to just speak to one thing. I did see that somebody dropped something in the chat in regards to Indigenous specific supports. And so I just wanted to speak specifically to how Rapid Rehousing has been kind of working with our Indigenous partners. So we just recently hired a Indigenous housing counselor. That person is on our team and will be available to support folks from our Indigenous partner sites who are interested in having an Indigenous housing counselor support them through this process. We also have, Indigenous follow-up supports available for folks who identify that that is what they would like. I spoke earlier in regards to the prioritization of units for our Indigenous partners. And one of the kind of new things that's happening for phase 3 is that we are kind of looking at the missing gap of, highlighting Indigenous women who are staying within shelters in the city of Toronto and ensuring that they're receiving, appropriate allocations as well. And so that's a big piece of work that we're going to be working through phase 3 that we're really excited about. And, we're working to support our Indigenous referring partners to ensure that, they have successes in this work. And it's been going really well. So I didn't know if there was anything, like any specific questions around how we've been supporting our Indigenous partners, but I'm certainly happy to speak to that if that is something that somebody is interested in. But I can get back to what the takeaway is. So that question was for us, I think, yes? What we would like folks to take back. So I think for me, the biggest piece and kind of the overlying trend that, is, and I find myself saying the most in the majority of the meetings and conversations that I'm having with our referring partners, is around the importance of, being proactive around documentation for clients. Obviously, it would be fantastic if different communities were able to implement something similar to Rapid Rehousing within their community. That would be great. But if folks are not ready to go in terms of the documentation required for any housing support that's coming their way, it kind of is all for nothing and it just delays all of the processes. So I think for me, the biggest takeaway is really just the importance of documentation gathering for folks that are ready within, your shelter programs. Because, you hate to see people lose opportunity for housing based on those type of things, right? Like, because they didn't have a piece of identification or, they didn't file their taxes in the previous calendar year, which I know is not always a priority for the folks that we're servicing. But when we're looking forward for housing opportunities coming their way, it's kind of, the biggest piece that for me, I always try to send that message to folks to get that work, even if the unit's not going to come from a Rapid Rehousing stream. Across the board, majority of housing providers require this type of documentation. So like that's the biggest takeaway for me. And then also that piece that Steph spoke to earlier, that, this is just a very tiny piece of the pie in terms of housing options for folks. We don't have as many units as we would, obviously love to have. We'd love to be able to house far more people, but, not waiting for opportunities to come and still actively doing that piece of work around looking for housing is, what I would hope people would take away.
My takeaway is continually to be proactive compared to reactive as a landlord. Have open communication, get that consent, be proactive, information shared based on consent, of course, but again, not having that in real time. These are people's lives, these are people's tenancies, and to be able to have that open communication and to be that proactive, not letting arrears get to a point where they're unmanageable. Let's get it when they're manageable. And it's about being proactive compared to reactive with eviction prevention.
Thanks, Ashley. I just want to quickly answer this question in the chat. It's a permanent housing. So all of the allocations through Rapid Rehousing are permanent housing, whether it's to the VAW sector or anywhere else throughout. Lisa, did you want to share your takeaway?
I think the takeaway for me would be, I just think it's really crucial for this open communication between sites and all the service providers involved, not only in Rapid Rehousing, but all the sites involved, and just making certain that the workers in the sites are really taking the time to get to know their clients in order to help them get housed and feel more comfortable with the housing process that's involved.
Awesome.
It's amazing. Well, thank you again to all our presenters for this amazing information. It has been recorded. We will be sending it out to everyone who registered. It will be posted on the Training and Technical Assistance website. And we thank all of you for joining us here today, and have a good rest of your Tuesday and a good rest of the week. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
I know.
Thank you.
Take care.